Welcome to Brighter Morning with Bo. I am Bo Tiwari, and I'm so glad you've joined us on MCTV, Multicultural TV, and U97.5 FM radio. We are here every day from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., Monday through Friday, and we have some of the most interesting and informed guests to talk with us about things that matter to you and matter in our economy and matter in our society. I want to say a welcome back to Shanil Al-Siran, the producer of this show and the reader of the news. She went away for a couple of days, maybe about 2 weeks, and she's back here. We're glad to have her back. And I want to say thanks to the crew for all the wonderful work that they did during the time that she was away. And I want to single out Natalia, who did the work during the time that Shanil was away. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. We're glad to have you on board. Our first guest is the Minister of Agriculture, and we will talk to him shortly, but before I do, I want to say, reading the papers this morning, all we are getting is bad news. You can't have a society and a country inundated with bad news like this and have any energy to do anything purposeful. So the first piece of news we have is this vaccine challenge, which is to say that people, although we have 4 vaccines in Trinidad and Tobago, Sinopharm, AstraZeneca, well, that may be finished now. We have the Johnson & Johnson, and we have the vaccines that are available now for children. Although we have all of these vaccines and they are available in large quantities, people will not go out and get the vaccines, and they will not get their children the vaccines. I want to commend all those parents who have made sure that their children have gotten vaccinated. I want to commend all those people who have gone out and taken the vaccines to protect themselves, to protect others, to protect the society. And I want to say to those people who are vaccine hesitant, I understand that you might have a problem and so on, but I think you have a responsibility in the society to keep yourself informed and to do what is right in the society. And I make no apologies for saying that there are many people in the society that are simply misleading people. I look at this situation with the vaccines now, where the union is challenging Republic Bank. And because Republic Bank has said, if you don't want to take the vaccine, you have to take a test. And the union is saying that the bank must now pay for that test. They must refund the money for that test. And they are challenging them to have their employees take the test. If a person feels that their freedom not to take a vaccine is so important that they don't want to take it, all right, you have taken the decision about your freedom. The bank has a duty and a responsibility to protect their employees and to protect the customers who come into the bank. I don't want to walk into the bank and get infected. And I don't think an employee inside Republic Bank wants to go to work and get infected. So if you take that decision as an employee that you don't want to be vaccinated, then you have to take responsibility for yourself. You can't expect the bank to take responsibility for your decision not to take a vaccine, because the bank's policy is that you should take the vaccine and come. I mean, I don't understand this level of unreason in the society. I mean, what is the union fighting? Why doesn't the union get on board and help people to understand that getting vaccinated is a way of making the workplace safe? I find this very, very unreasonable. I mean, there's a logic here that I can't understand. Now, I know this vaccine issue of not taking the vaccine is not a Trinidad and Tobago situation. I know it's everywhere. And that just means that you have people who are unreasonable everywhere. In the face of science, in the face of the dying, everything. And the other thing, you don't take the vaccine, right, and you get sick. You get infected. When you go in the hospital, you want to blame the doctors and blame the hospital system. I mean, really, if you took the vaccine, you might not have gotten sick. And if you got sick, it would not have been that bad to take you into ICU. You know, let's have some reason, no man. Reason. Please, in the face of science, in the face of the evidence, why can't we do what is right for the community? If you have a large number of people vaccinated in your society, then the chances of unvaccinated children getting sick is less, and the chance of having a variant emerge in your society, out of your society, is less. And we don't have the Delta variant in the community yet. That is going to wreak havoc in this place when it gets here. That is the dominant strain in the United States. We travel up and down to the United States. It is inevitably going to get here. And I cannot understand the unreason. I don't understand the point of view. The second thing is the corruption in the police service. We have that in the newspaper headlines this morning. And then there are all the controversies about the commissioner of police. Then there was the statement of the Minister of National Security about the police service. Last night on the news, you had an inspector of police responding to that, and so on. I mean, I don't see how you're going to have peace and stability and security in a society in which the police service is under so much question, and in which the security forces are suspect. You know, this is a serious state of affairs in this country. And you have people talking all over the place, saying what they want, threatening the society, threatening the government. I mean, what do we want to do with the country called Trinidad and Tobago? We want to match it up. We want to finish it. Things are not bad enough. And the third thing I want to say is somebody in authority from Heritage Petroleum going to show their face and tell the society what is happening with these oil spills that are taking place? And these press releases that are coming out, simply saying what is happening and what they are doing about it. Will somebody from the Heritage Petroleum Company with gumption, with a sense of accountability, will they come before the population, please, and say what is happening there and why these things are happening over and over? And secondly, will somebody in the EMA, I saw different stories, not just this Heritage Petroleum issue, of a community, I think in Barrackpore, having a problem with somebody who established a place for cleaning fish. And yesterday I saw somebody, I think in the same Barrackpore area, in which there's a spill. Will somebody in the EMA get some, what can I say? I don't know if I can say the word I want to say on television. But would somebody from the EMA use the authority of that institution to bring some measure of control over these matters in which people are simply either abusing the EMA's rules and guidelines, or you might have complicity between the EMA and some of these people. And you have silence in the face of all of these things happening as if the institution does not exist. So here we are. You have a pandemic in the world. Half the population does not want to take the vaccine. You have the unions fighting business institutions that want to protect the space and want to want to protect their employees. You have a corrupt and suspect security services in the country. You have wild statements taking place in the society. You have violation of every reasonable environmental expectation in the society, one from a state company and the other instances from private sector companies. And you have silence from the EMA. And people in this country want to have a country. That is a country in which nobody does what they are supposed to, in which everybody wants what they want, in which everybody wants to fight over everything, they want to solve no problems, in which there is no accountability, no sense of responsibility. You expect a society to cohere if this is the culture and character, disposition and behavior of a society? I mean, Jesus. Anyway, our numbers are 609-6283 and 609-6284 you can call. And we are talking now to the Minister of Agriculture. We want to welcome him and talk with him. Good morning, Minister. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you very much. I'm very good. Let me first congratulate you on the morning program. It's from all the reviews I've heard and seen, it's doing well. And let me also express my condolences to the MCTV family. I know that Ganesh Gayapasad, who is connected to the ownership of the station, passed away. He's from my home community. I have two communities. I have a home community and I have a new home community, Chaguanas East, as you know. But I want to express my condolences to the MCTV family and to Ganesh's family, the Gayapasad family from Rio Claro. So I'm happy to be here this morning. I have followed your opening. Yes, sometimes the headlines can be distressing. We all live here and we want to see some more positive news coming through. And I hope this morning that I could share and we could talk about some of the positive things in food and some of the things that lie ahead. I know that you're more than a morning show host. You're former senator, former minister twice, in two different administrations and member of parliament elected. So you have an excellent understanding of what my job involves and what we expect of the country, the challenges and some of the opportunities. And on the vaccination, it's very important. I myself, for the first time in 19 months, was able to travel recently, and on my return, I said to my colleagues, there's really no place for the unvaccinated in this world. I'm sorry to say that. Movement, activity, a sense of security, a sense of safety only comes from vaccination. I could say that from having had to go on to maybe 27 hours of airports and traveling to go and to return, and a lot of procedures, testing on the way out and testing on the way in. And vaccination really makes a difference in many ways in terms of smoothing our interactions, but most importantly, in keeping us safe and alive. As somebody with political responsibility, I had to interact with people throughout this COVID, to listen to calls from Cuba, the Cuba facility, to receiving videos from distressed people and families communicating with me. And at the end of it, I think most people I interact with and who have been COVID positive really look forward to getting the vaccination, and I encourage people to do that. We're on the doorstep of the traditional hunting season, which is something that is important to families in specific parts of the country. We have thousands of people who engage in hunting for economic activity and also for sport during the season. And a big factor in the hunting season being able to open October 1st this year. We didn't open on October 1st last year, but a huge factor is the vaccination. It's not mandatory, but I want to encourage those in the hunting fraternity to lead the way. Through the Ministry of Health, we are going to make the vaccination available close to where the hunters live and operate. And once we do that, I'm making it clear to the hunters that the opening of the season is really contingent on having a very successful vaccination drive involving those who wish to participate in the sport.
Yeah, well, good morning to you, and thanks very much for your good wishes and reflections, and also for your condolences on the death of the brother of the chairman of this company. So I want to join you there in expressing condolences for the loss of the brother of Mr. Baal Prasad, and to the entire Prasad family. The Minister, we started talking about vaccines, and you talked about the hunters and so on. But we have a major challenge in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a situation where agriculture has not ever, since the fall of cocoa, since the fall of sugar, been able to find its way in Trinidad and Tobago. So we have had a continuing situation of increased imports. And while we have some production in Trinidad and Tobago, we have not been able to satisfy our needs in Trinidad and Tobago, nor reduce the import bill over time. I think this COVID has shown us that hunger could be at the forefront of our society's challenge if you do not have some means of feeding yourself. And I want to ask you, as minister responsible for agriculture, are we going to see under your tenure a reasonable movement of Trinidad and Tobago to a level of food security that is adequate. I know we cannot produce everything that we consume. I know that we will have to continue to import. But can we see under your tenure an increase in the production and integration of the agricultural production system with other things so that we can in fact be as self-sufficient as we can be in food, secure in food in Trinidad and Tobago? Can we see that?
Well, you've touched on some key points. You've touched the key areas, and the most important question you've asked is whether under me we could see improvement, we could see change, and we could see us going in the right direction. And right away, I want to tell you that that I may be a part of the way forward, but a lot of different things must work together. Some of which we have control over, and some of which we have no control over, or we have to increase our control over. And I will tell you this: in the context of hunger and food security, food security was an expression that came out as far back as the 50s from a political point of view. And over time, we've developed a different understanding of what food security is, and I'll get back to that. But on the issue of hunger, we've seen even in the United States, for example, with massive amounts of production and highly subsidized production and food availability, you know that there is hunger in the United States. You know that a lot of people go hungry. So you can have production, you can have excesses, and you can have surpluses, but it does not mean that all will be fed. And it has to do with the way food systems operate and the way society operates in terms of being able to reach the people who are the most vulnerable. So a lot of things have to work together. In the context of COVID, COVID shines a light on something that we've not talked about because it's not been a convenient discussion for us, and that is the relationship between food and health, longevity, and wellness. So this comorbidities in COVID, which came out very early, is not something we've given a lot of attention to, and it is important that we draw that link between why we eat and how do we maintain our health over the long term. So I want to say in terms of production, and I just want to reflect on cocoa and sugar. It's not that it's not that we woke up one morning and didn't have cocoa and sugar. Cocoa essentially, like coconut, like most things in agriculture, and it's not us around the world. You get issues with two things, one or three things: pests and diseases. Over which you have some control, and most importantly, weather. And weather is becoming, the most important thing in food production and in being able to eat. In fact, very early in my term as minister, I said the most important thing for a minister of agriculture, I believe, is the weather. And you see coffee prices, for example, globally, it's not hit the consumer in the way it should. But coffee prices are 50% up year on year. And that has to do with the size and influence of Brazil in the industry, and two completely different factors of weather. So on the Arabica side, where Brazil is one of the leading suppliers in the world, you have the frost that has affected the yields, and on the other side of Brazil, where you have mainstream coffee, you have the drought that has affected production, but it's completely different weather systems, but the effect is the same. And across the globe, we've seen the challenges of weather, but of course other things really directly related to COVID, like shipping, like transport, internal availability of labor, and those things have been affected. But I want to say on the issue of production, because as a minister, I've always said ministers who precede me without fail were attracted to two things. One, setting a target for reduction of the food import bill, and not one of them achieved it, and we could talk about why. And the second thing is this issue of ramping up production without understanding that in ramping up production, you could actually kill the same farmers that you would like to help. On the production side, let me tell you what the farmers have demonstrated in COVID. And for my success really depends on our farmers, our consumers, the weather, the policy environment, my colleagues in the cabinet, and so far they have been well behaved and highly supportive. So in the response to COVID last year, we had the Veggie Box program, which involves the distribution to vulnerable families via the members of parliament, the boxes of local produce together with chicken, and then this year we introduced local eggs. And I'll just talk about this latest phase, which is meant to run from May. It started off being May alone, May 2021, when the new measures were brought in response to what ended up being, in part, Delta. And the plan in May 2021 was to distribute 25,000 families in the month of May. But very soon, as soon as we started, first deliveries were on 7th May 2021. We delivered 2,000 families across 8 constituencies via their members of parliament. But a few days later, on May 10th, the Minister of Finance announced that the program will be extended 3 months, and that will be May, June, July, and if necessary, August, September. The if necessary kicked in because it's a 5-month program. We went in the mid-year review and allocated out of the 500 million stimulus fund, 57 million to support this program. And let me give you some of the numbers. We set out from May to the end of September to reach 125,000 families. By the end of August, we had reached much more than that. So via the members of parliament at the end of August, we reached 107,000 families. Via the councillors, 139 councillors, and the 12 assemblymen, we reached just over 39,000 families. That's 146 in total. So we were, at the end of August, we were ahead of our target by a significant amount. The program ends in September, and I estimate that by the end of September, we would have reached 181,000 families using the same funds. The numbers, we've worked with just over 300 farmers. At the end of August, we paid out, or either paid out or had commitments to pay $30 million to farmers. We bought 30 million in produce, and we bought 1 million pounds of chicken from the local processors. We had commitments to pay out another 7 million there, and that is the most significant thing about that data I'm giving you is this: we've been able to purchase in that 4-month period 5 million pounds of produce, and we've done that without seeing shortages elsewhere in the market and without seeing price increases. So we've been able to, the farmers have been able to produce 5 million pounds of produce for that program without the municipal market, the farmers market, the roadside vendors, or anybody else suffering from not having produce to sell, and therefore having to price increases on account of lack of supply. And what that shows is that the farmers are able to produce at short notice and sometimes in difficult conditions. We weren't affected in the main by the weather, but throughout in August we did in fact have some issues. It did not affect our supply. The thing about it is what drives that production, and I'm very reluctant, as you know, in providing direct taxpayer support to what are essentially private producers in the form of subsidies or guaranteed prices and so on. But I've had to face some of the realities of the market, and farmers would like to have some element of security in the risk that they're taking. And the state as a purchaser, if we can guarantee a market to the farmers just using the state, and we have the hospitals, we have the school feeding program, we have the defense force. Those are three areas where purchasing takes place. If we can secure that market to the farmers and give them a certain level of price comfort, then it will encourage a level of production and a quality of production that we could spread throughout the country and be the cornerstone of that production that we want to see, that activity we want to sustain. So we've seen it. I have no doubt that we've seen it. The next step is for us to sustain it, but a lot of factors must work together for that to happen.
Minister, the key thing is, as you say, is to sustain it. And we have seen the opening through COVID, and government has done well to link the production system of private farmers to the distribution of food to those who need it. And that has been very good. But, I mean, how are we going to get to the point where we are sustainably producing a significant amount of food for local consumption? I'm not even dealing with the exports. Just for local consumption. Reduce the import bill and have a viable system within the country that allow us to do this sustainably. And clearly we can't do it on the land alone. We have to use science and technology. We have to get new investment. We have to have different strategies. Tell me what is happening about that will give us comfort. Last year in the budget, $500 million was provided, and also agriculture was declared a tax-free industry. What is happening with that? How is it going to play out? And how is it going to make a difference in terms of food production, distribution, and processing?
Yeah, again, you've raised all the key points, and let me just make the point or emphasize the point that I've always made. The first thing is that we've had some PPPs in the ministry, some of which are complete and already seeing the results. But I've made the point that PPP is nothing new. In agriculture may be the area of the economy that we've always had PPP, and that has to do with the relationship between the state land and the production of food. So, for example, we are self-sufficient in local poultry, both in terms of chicken and duck meat. And that has to do with government policy and using the state land to create an asset base for the local private sector. So it was the 1960s policy. I would say Victor O'Brien, the very first Minister of Agriculture, was the one who laid the foundation in the Plumita and the River area in relation to rice farmers and other forms of agriculture, Victor having been the person elected for that area. And thereafter, Kamal Mohammed took it, and a lot of the work in terms of our self-sufficiency in poultry has to do with Kamal Mohammed's work in the Bish, Rio Claro, Mayaro, right down to Barakpo areas. It's very important that we understand that history, because it was the state's contribution of what I would describe as cheap land that created the opportunity for that sort of economic activity to develop and to become a billion industry in this country owned by the private sector. And that is why I always emphasize that the role of the private sector, that the government will create the environment. And there are some areas in which we've not successfully done that, and that is in the land administration environment for sure. And the infusion of technology in our own operations as a bureaucracy. So it has to be private, sector driven. And last year I calculated that in 2020 we had about $200 million in private sector investments taking place in the agricultural sector, and it's more now. And some of the things I would highlight is the success of the Aripo PPP, where we took an 1,146-acre state-owned facility, a former livestock station of the ministry, and was able to put it out for private sector participation, successfully enter into a contract. And I reported in July in the Senate, or maybe late June, that investor had already spent $22 million in the development of that facility, had entered into an agreement with Nestle to provide it with local milk sometime in 2022, which would lead to a doubling of the local production of milk for a market that is very, very good and very strong desire in Trinidad and Tobago for local milk. And that is the Nestle brand that carries very proudly the Trinidad and Tobago flag on the box. Then we have the hatcheries investment being made by Nutrimix, which would stabilize the poultry sector even further. That investment goes to $80 million. We have Central Farm, the local duck producer, who puts about 1 million pounds of duck meat on the local market. They are making a $25 million investment. It delayed significantly by COVID in a modern duck processing facility, and then we have some smaller investment. There is a significant private sector investment that is about to be the commissioning of the you'd start seeing the produce and you'd start seeing the fruits of it this week. That company is going to make an announcement this week, and that is a $50 million investment that has already been made. I had a look at it, a final look at it before the announcement on the weekend. I had a look at it, and you would be really blown away by what we've been able to achieve in this country. You'd be blown away by the prospects of it, and there's a lot to talk about and a lot to learn.
In what?
This latest investment has to do on the processing and packaging side, the receipt of produce from the farmers, and it's already branded.
Side of it, yes.
Yeah, a brand has been created, linkages to the local market. The brand is fully compliant with the export requirements of the major export markets. It's ready to go. It has huge infusion of technology, and I've seen some technology there that I would say not just new to Trinidad and Tobago, but new to the world. The company has been able to leverage its significant competence in IT and innovation, and been able to produce that. And that alone tells me that we're on the right track. We're running on two tracks. That is to keep traditional agriculture going, to keep the farmers, try to strengthen them, but also to create the environment for the private sector. And there are other things that we've been significantly affected by COVID in terms of the restrictions, the shipping, the movement of people, and the ability for some of these investments to come on stream. And the vaccination, the reopening of the borders, the ability of some easing on the shipping has caused some movement in Trinidad and Tobago. In terms of the food import bill, well,
let me just jump in there for 1 minute,
yeah.
Which is that you're right. I mean, there are two tracks really, which is that you have the traditional farmers that are part of the production system. So there is a way of knowing how much land, how many farmers, etc. And there's the critical issue of land tenure for them. I don't know if that has been properly and effectively and comprehensively dealt with yet. So
maybe we could talk very quickly about land tenure.
No. And here the second question. The second question is the technological track, which now allows us to enter agriculture at a different level of sophistication. How is the ministry involved in the facilitation, management of these two separate tracks in a constructive way that will lead ultimately to results and production on both tracks in Trinidad and Tobago?
Thank you very much. That frames it up. On the issue of land tenure, well, as a former member of parliament,
Well, I
I
know
know
my
your struggles,
my
and
farmers are still
you
looking for
know,
it.
you know mine, and it operates at so many different levels. But I would say, in terms of achievement, I would say as a government and as a minister, I've been able to establish myself as I established land tenure as my number one priority. I've been consistent. I've been talking consistently. I've been taking files to cabinet and cleaning up and doing what I could do. I must admit that it's frustrating. Sometimes it's really frustrating. Things don't move as fast as I would like them to. The COVID has slowed us down in the sense that our land management division
Think of
has
the
been,
farmer who doesn't
yeah.
own the land, minister,
I
and
know,
what
I
his
know.
position is.
I mean, I have the thing about it is that thankfully they've been able to produce. So some of our most successful farmers, but we can't sustain that. I've said that on many occasions. So to get to the tech to tell you where we are now, we've done a lot of the while having the matters approved, and thousands have been approved by cabinet, and some have gotten the leases and their different stages outside of the ministry getting that part of it done. But at the same time, we're working on two other elements of it. That is digitizing the files, and we've been able. We're about 50% of that program. It's painstaking. It takes long, but you have to invest the time and money to get it done right. And then we've engaged iGov to do the final part of it, which is to bring the technology to us, which will allow us to interface with files, not us, the users, also the state land users, to interface in a digital environment with their files. We've just completed the technical work on the last phase, which is the investment in the technology, the creation of the system, and we have a 5-month time frame for the completion of that part of it. I have said to the people involved, we've reached this exact point and not moved to the next level. So this takes us to a point where we've never been before. I have my hands, my eyes, my body, my soul on that part of the project because I really want to see this happen for this country. So I think we've convinced the farmers and across the board, not just farmers, people, all of those users of state land. There are other elements of it that you'd really have to bring me back to talk about land alone. The other side is the technology, and let me tell you where I am with that. I've seen the private sector invest in the technology, and the thing that bothers me a lot, and my colleague Minister Foster Cummings, of course, is the line Minister for Youth. We've all administrations have suffered with involvement of youth in agriculture. Now, the farming families where you have young people, of course, they are involved, and they 3-4 generations. We see them all over the country. But in terms of the other, particularly the urban youth, and my colleague Foster Cummins, I know he struggled with it as an elected MP, as a former youth officer of the party, and as Minister of Youth Development, he has taken a part of wanting to do two things: reintroduce the youth camps, the physical youth camps, and also the programs they offer, and also make land available to young persons who wish to enter agriculture. And part of the 500 million, a significant part, I should say, maybe 250 million of that is committed to development of homesteads, for particular emphasis on young persons, and other things relating to youth in agriculture. And Mr. Cummins would be able to talk about that, because those are projects which will take us about 2.5 to 3 years to come to life. But on the technology side in particular, I'll tell you this, I have wondered about the greenhouse. I know you as an MP tried to drive it through, and we just don't see them in Trinidad and Tobago. So one of the things that have changed my mind on, I would say, is that that part of it, I don't think we can rely on the private sector. I think that the state has to make the investment in order to drive greenhouse development. So what we've done, I'm on my way to my colleagues in cabinet. We've done a lot of work with the government of China to provide us with technical support, because it has not been a simple thing of how do we select the technology, how do we select the materials and the design and so on that will work in our environment. And we've We've engaged the Chinese. We've reached a point where we can make a decision based on the advice we've gotten. And I will say that the state via NAMDEVCO, my proposal to my colleagues in cabinet is that the state via NAMDEVCO will make the investment in greenhouses by creating 4 greenhouse parks, each of them 10 acres in 4 different parts of Trinidad. I propose that we do that in Chagaramas, in Talparo, in Lopino Bonnet, and in the Chabonas East constituency, that we do 4 greenhouse parks. We make it available to particularly the younger technology interested type of farming people, and we manage it, and we link the payment of rent to achievement of production targets. So you could actually, if you achieve your targets, you pay what I would like to see as a nominal fee. And I think that once we get those going, or get at least one going, and we take the risk with the technology and the other things, I think that the state will drive the use of technology, that particular form of technology, which will achieve a few elements of public policy, which is youth involvement in agriculture, technology in agriculture, developing specific communities around agriculture, being able to supply the supermarket and restaurant that needs a committed, predictable, acceptable quality type of thing. That is why they turn to the import. They could just buy something in a bag and they know exactly what it is, and it will drive that. But it will also create that economic activity amongst young persons where they're able to sustain themselves. So there are several policy areas that are going to be achieved, but the most important one is that we are going to develop now a segment of the agricultural output that is protected from climate change and pests and diseases. And once we do that, and we do this project successfully, we will start seeing the transition of production in the country from traditional to climate-protected agriculture, to technology-driven agriculture, and the state would make an investment. I estimate that these 4 parks will cost us about $40 million, which will come out of the $500 million allocated.
Minister, we've got to close up now. We've got a break for the news. But if you can answer me quickly, just in terms of numbers, did we reduce the import bill over the COVID period by any significant amount?
The bill in my first 17 months, the bill had already been reduced by $1 billion, and I admitted in answering a question that it was not really my work. A part of it had to do with how we were able to influence some of the supermarket owners. The introduction of the farmers market has been a significant input in doing that, allowing people to move away from supermarket to come to the farmers market and so on. But a lot of it, that shift really had to do with Forex and the pressure on Forex. And I think over COVID, I have not seen the latest numbers, but I know that there would have been a decrease in the food import bill. Okay. And again, influenced by COVID shipping.
We have a slight reduction. What about in the coming year, in the next budget? We don't have any time now, but are we going to see another reduction, yes or no? I'm going to have you back because there are so many issues we did not discuss.
I would just tell you this, that while you may have a reduction in what we import and the appetite for the import, you will see increases because of the grain price increase and the other increase. So the food import bill is dynamic. It all depends on the price you pay in the global market. So there have been increases in grain. So even though we have reduced imports, or we have reduced our appetite for imports, the bill itself may not change because you may have increases in the things that we must import. So we could have another discussion on the dynamics of the food import bill.
We have to close now, Minister. I want to thank you very much for your answers and your explanations, but we need to address some of these issues because I consider your sector really critical. I mean,
absolutely, and thanks for the support.
We've got to address the issue of land. We've got to address the issue of financing. This issue of state versus private ownership is another issue. We've got to address the issue of technology, of science, the link to knowledge systems, in agriculture, and I feel that we have to have a continuation of this discussion. So after the budget,
Absolutely, I'm always available.
after the budget, after your allocation is made, and I imagine you present your policy position in the parliament, I'm going to have you back so we can talk about what is going to happen over the next year. All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you very much for coming, and you've been watching Brighter Morning with Bo. We are talking to the Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Clarence Rambharrat, and we move over now.